Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Universe. Do you hear me? In the last episode, I share with you a story of my childhood memories and my quest through life in the search for meaning. Meaning that would help bring clarity to life-perplexing discoveries. I gave you a glimpse into my past and how it played a role in shaping the person that I am today. Let us explore the phrase, I am. When you hear these words, what comes to your mind? Is the declaration of self being identified from the inside outward or the outside inward? The phrase, know thyself, is commonly known by Greek philosopher Socrates, relation to self-knowledge or the knowledge of self. But where do we begin the journey to understand the self? And how does the self influence the way we exist in the world? Are we the clothing that we decide to wear on a specific day? What happens after we return home and strip away into nakedness? Are we what others think of us? If we are seen as confident, how come we still struggle with self-worth? What about the career path we have chosen? After we clocked out of work, do our position follow afterwards? And if we are our body, how come we have parts of ourselves that we wish to transform? At times, we feel whole and consistent, while at other times, we are in doubt or skeptical. We may even fit ourselves into a role in the hope of finding a more definite character. We search for something or someone outside of us as an attempt to feel whole. We crave for something solid and concrete. We desire to feel secure by the assurance of our existence. Today, we are going to explore the layers of the self, from the surface to the depth of who we are, and descend into the components of human identities. It was 1994, during a rainy season in Laos. A pregnant woman traveled with her friend into the city to see a well-known fortune teller. In that meeting, the psychic revealed that the child she was having would grow up to identify as the opposite gender. In addition, the sonographer who has performed the ultrasound informed her that the baby is a girl. The woman was disappointed by the news she received. She had anticipated for her second child to be a boy. One night during her pregnancy, she shared an intimate moment with the baby in her womb, reassuring that she no longer cared what gender the baby was, as long as her child arrived into the world healthy and strong. On June 3rd, 1994, the woman gave birth to her newborn. The baby turned out to be a boy. The new mother was surprised and overwhelmed with joy. Years down the road, this woman would come to discover that the fortune teller's prophecy was slowly unfolding into reality. Was this a predetermined, inevitable fate? Did the laws of creation already design the story of the baby's life? Where does our destiny lie, and what part does free will play in dictating the outcome of our lives? I want to share my philosophy of what self-discovery is through my story, and how I identify the meaning of who and what I am from my life experiences. From my understanding of science and the complexity of our universe, I connected myself to how the cosmos is structured and how this has led me to form the layers of my identities through time. I've always had a strong sense of belonging and awareness. There was a peculiar sensitivity to an inner consciousness that existed within me. Something about being alive felt familiar and intimate. Although it seemed as if I was a child experiencing life for the first time, there lingered a feeling of knowing buried deep within me that felt acquainted with this place. That feeling has continued to expand as I continue on my journey in life. I spent a lot of time alone as a child. Solitude provided space for my mind to wander freely and explore the internal and external world within and around me. There was a force, an energy source that occupies spaces for intelligence, direction, visions, and insights. It also occupies ignorance, sorrow, and vagueness. Regardless of the unfamiliar understanding I had of it, there was something I was certain of, and it was that I could trust it. I found comfort in it, even when I was unsure of who or what it was. I began to form a relationship with this force, and as I continued to examine the information from this space, I was led to many self-realizations. At the age of 6, I developed a social identity that was imposed upon me by my family, friends, and teachers. These people had a predetermined course on how I should grow up as a child by the external perception they had around my body. My body seemingly informed them on how to guide and direct me through traditional ideas of their society. The first indicator we utilize to maneuver a child through life is their gender. We use traditional ideas of society to decide the role we fit them into by the garments we buy for them, the individuals we place them with, and how we determine to teach and discipline them. Although we may not disclose to our children in words about who they are, we do so indirectly by the information we provide through our actions. And as our children begin to discover the world around them, they start to form their identity around the information we present. In spite of the fact that I could not comprehend what was happening, my intuition rejected their idea around what I ought to become. Even with my inability to articulate the feeling I was having, there was the wisdom of a personal domain within me. That wisdom would eventually carry me through life with the inner truth that are unseen by the world. It wasn't long until everyone began to notice that I was different. I was colorful, flamboyant, and unconventional. It was the first time I felt seen. Maybe not entirely, but these people sensed something from me, which confirmed and validated that I was not the only one with the unusual feeling. I was lucky to be brought up in a country that gave me the freedom to express myself without being ridiculed and ostracized. The people there have seen individuals like me before, and they knew what this was. They were open to my vivacious personality and the sureness of this inner truth that was expressing outward. Perhaps they saw me before I did. There were a few that made me feel wrong, off, or even flawed. I could grasp the rejection in their eyes and their lack of desire to form a genuine relationship with me. My grandfather, who once hit me in the head with a bottle. My grandmother and her display of contempt. And my father, someone who was never around. I couldn't understand why some of these people treated me with discontentment and irritation as if they knew what would become of me. I was treated as someone they had no desire to represent as their own. Even with this truth of me that they perceive as a burden, they try to make me feel included. Yet, I could feel the lack of intimacy and the space between our connections. The only person I felt completely seen by was my nanny. She was the only person at the time who gave me the security to exist in my body without limitation. Her ability to see me wholeheartedly was a gift of acceptance I needed as a child. She gave me a safe place to be who I am without judgments, which is a feeling that every child needs at that stage of development to help bring them closer to self-knowledge. The only time we ever truly feel genuine is when those outside allowed us to be who we are, even in the most unrecognizing circumstances. To awaken the gift of the intrinsic connection between two human beings, one must welcome the other to engage in an exchange of depth and transcend beyond the surface and reveal the shared parallel of our human experience. We all want to exist in life without fear of consequences from the outer world, and to offer ourselves fully for all that we are, without being deemed as less human. At this moment, I learned the difference between being seen and accepted, as well as being seen and rejected. I understood when to hide myself to protect who I am and fit into the world safely. The only time I would let myself be free was when I am given the opportunity to be with those who show me unconditional love. This understanding followed me through my teenage years in America. Moving to a new country was a significant culture shift. I had to readjust in a new land where there were new standards to live up to. I had to learn how to fit into the contemporary society in the United States. It was also my first time being with my mother since my father's passing. I found myself missing the family, friends, and the people that I used to have. Most importantly, I missed the freedom of expression to exist without confinement. There was an illiberal and conservative feel to America at the time. Even though I did not yet know the constraints of this country, my intuition told me who I was must be kept hidden. It wasn't long until they began to notice that I was different. The American kids bullied me in school with the same rejection I experienced in Asia. Even with my strong effort to hide and fit in, as heartbreaking as it was for me spiritually, my queerness was apparent to the other kids, and that made me a target for attack. My soul and loving spirit had won the kids over in school over time. They couldn't resist the beauty that existed within my truth, and that I refused to fit into their ways. The other kids admired the integrity, strength, and courage that I had to stand proudly in my skin. Perhaps they wanted it too, but were too afraid. In high school, I experienced an existential crisis. I was dripping into a depression, and I slept my days away. There was a feeling of emptiness in my life. I didn't know who I was, nor did I identify with the person I was living as in life. Every time I walked past the mirror, I questioned myself. Whose life am I living? Who is this person standing before me? I felt like a ghost roaming around the world without an appearance. These existential crises carry messages. If we take the time to observe the information that comes from them, they reveal many hidden mysteries about ourselves that need to be decoded. I spent most of my time watching Thai movies when my mother was at the nail shop to entertain myself. I was fortunate to have come across a film that changed my life called Beautiful Boxer. It's a funny story. I had put off viewing the movie for a while because I was under the impression that it has something to do with the art of boxing, not knowing that this was going to be something that changed the entire course of my life. It was about a renowned transgender woman who boxed her way into success and became a well-respected person in Thailand. At the time, I could not understand why this film affected me the way that it did. The story of this woman's life felt intimate, and it resonated with me. Every time I fell into my depression, I would find comfort in her story. Her story was the only thing that gave me hope and a feeling of empowerment. It inspired me to begin my research online. I came across Lisa Griffins, who is a psychologist specializing in helping transgender folks gain access to the medical treatment they need to begin their transitions. Lisa Griffins introduced me to a wonderful woman who became like a mother figure to me, Paige Doula. In our community, we call her a trans mom. Paige was on the same journey as I was. Even though we were from completely different backgrounds and generations, we shared something similar, something that only the one who have gone through this journey will understand the kind of revelation one must endure to gain peace. I learned that it is never too late to follow your inner voice and to stand in your truth, that overcoming your fear is the first step to liberation. I was preparing my path into that freedom because it was either that or death, and there was no way I was going to leave this world without seeing the woman I've been longing for my whole life to come into existence. I secretly planned this without anyone knowing, and the next step I had to do was convince my mother. I knew that she loved the person that I pretended to be, a son that she had always wanted. I could tell by the framed photos across her bedroom and the proud facial expression in her eyes when she looked at them. She had hopes and dreams for her son, a son that I would later take away from her. The pressure was the exact reason why I was pretending to live a life that would make her happy and drown myself in an enormous amount of emptiness. I tried to live up to the standard that everyone else had for me and be the person they wanted me to be. But being consumed by the contradiction of those who I knew did not understand what I was experiencing isn't the place where I was going to find myself. This plan was personal, and it was too deep at the time for anyone else to comprehend. I told my mother that I wanted to see a therapist for personal reasons. I felt that it was best to ease her into the idea of my new path in life. I reassured her that this felt right to me. Although she fought against my decision, I made it clear that the only choice she had was to accept the person I was becoming, that it was better to have a living daughter than a dead son. I was 14 years old when I began my transition. It was the first step into my evolution as a human being, the first transformation which taught me what it was like to feel real and authentic. In order to be seen, I had to be visible. I could not hide any longer, and even with the pressure of those around me, I stood by my decision. This truth gave me strength and power, and while my external world was being disturbed by my changes, my inner world finally felt at peace. It was much easier for me to fight against others than to fight against myself. I was in the driver's seat of my life, steering into the direction of the unknowns, regardless of what was ahead. I knew that this path lies the creation of my physical dimension, a reflection that would help people see the existing source within me more clearly and vividly. Everything in life has its unique set of challenges. We never arrive at a destination. We arrive to places and points of rediscovery and recreation. My path to womanhood was one of the most profound journeys of my life. I had to reinvent myself not just physically, but also emotionally, socially, behaviorally, and mentally. I had to examine and figure out how to bring forth the embodiment of appearance that would reflect the kind of woman I desired to become. I learned that being a woman isn't solely based on being beautiful, sexy, or feminine. Although these things are important, but they cannot alone adequately express the admiration I have for women. I did not want to settle with just being desirable physically. Being a woman is skin deep. External attractiveness has no relation to goodness or worthiness. The kind of woman who inspired me was powerful, graceful, and sophisticated. These kind of characteristics cannot be obtained by putting on makeup, having luscious hair, or a sexy body. I wanted to be the kind of woman who did not need to search for recognition in men. I wanted to be the kind of woman that I was enamored by when I was growing up. The type of woman who delights the eyes with modesty. The type of woman that drives those around her into actions without force. Dominates with tenderness. The type of woman with a mind that is so captivating, she penetrates the human psyche for eternity. Like my grandmother, who had built wealth that provided a legacy for her family and was powerful. My mother, who have shown me grace, style, and class, a true definition of timeless beauty. Janet Mox, who furthered the trans movement and aggressively fought her way to gain access to spaces that gave women like myself a voice. The trans women who I have crossed paths with within my journey that taught me to be resilient, unapologetic, and dynamic. And many more women who I've taken inspiration from. These women helped shape the vision I developed of true womanhood. Their work provided me the tools necessary to navigate through my newfound path with a model of what to become. These women led the movement by setting the benchmark for all of us. They paved ways for us to move forward through the world with certitude and inclusivity. These phenomenal women gave us a reflection of who and what we can become. They overcame the deep-rooted oppression, and through their resilience, we were allowed to continue the revolution and inspire the next generation to come. To be a woman is sacred, a true privilege. I pay homage to all of these women who have laid the foundation of my womanhood. These heroes ignited the burning desire within me to become more than what I had anticipated. After I reached a point in life where I felt recognized as the woman I desired for everyone to witness, I had to consider my role as a member of society. I had to consider my role as a citizen with an expectation to contribute to civilization. I consider it as a dutiful role to expand my social identity and embrace the responsibility to become a part of something larger than myself. Becoming a woman was a pivotal moment of my life, a significant part of who I am. But there's more to life than my trans identity. I have desires, dreams, and passion. I have the need to be seen, acknowledged, and feel belong. I have a yearning to learn, to understand the complexity of life, and to recognize the fundamental principles of how life is lived to the fullest. To be known, we must have to face the unknowns. We must descend into the profundity that lies within the core of who we are. When we begin to have a deeper understanding of how we are designed, that is where we can find a sense of purpose and wholeness. Since we are built of many layers, the search into knowing who we are cannot be defined by only one aspect of our being. We are shaped by different and connected parts. Before my race, the Asian physical characteristic given by my mother and father, my ethnicity, the culture that influenced the early stages of my life, my gender, as a trans person who identified differently than the sex I was assigned at birth, my sexual orientation, as a pansexual, a term referring to attraction or love towards people of all gender, identities, and sexes, social statuses, such as education, income, occupation, and lifestyle, religion, my beliefs about existence of God or spiritual practices. I am a being operating in a human body, and at the core of every human lies the universal parallel of our experiences, and that we are so much more similar than we are different. We are all on a journey of self-mastery. We're all climbing up the infinite ladder of possibilities. We are all on an expedition to uncover our unexplored potentials. We all deserve to be honored for our endeavors, the heartbreaks, loves, failures, accomplishment, and many more battles fought here on earth. We are heroes and deserve to immerse ourselves in our victories. Thank you for listening. And before I go, I wish you the best in your findings, for there is so much that awaits you. Good luck.